The sun always seemed tired in Zenari City, like even the sky knew the people there carried heavy hearts. In one quiet corner of this dusty little town lived a girl named Victoria. She was 23 years old, soft-spoken, with eyes that always looked like they were hiding tears. Her mother had died the day she was born. Since then, Victoria had lived with a father who never once called her my daughter. Mr. Martin, her father, remarried when Victoria was still a toddler. His new wife Clara was sharp-tongued and cold-hearted. Clara had a daughter of her own, Lily, who was just 2 years younger than Victoria. But the two girls might as well have come from different worlds. Where Lily was praised, Victoria was blamed. Where Lily was dressed in pretty clothes and jewelry, Victoria wore torn hand-me-downs and worked with tired hands. If Lily dropped a plate, Victoria was punished. If Clara was angry, Victoria became the punching bag for her words. The house was big enough, but for Victoria, it never felt like home. She was a maid, a shadow, a burden, never a daughter. But there was one place Victoria felt free, the tiny storeroom behind the kitchen. She kept her most precious things there, old scraps of fabric, a blunt pair of scissors, a small box of threads, and her secret sketchbook. Every time she could steal a moment, she would sit and draw. Dresses, coats, pants, gowns, things she imagined seeing in magazines or on rich women who passed by their dusty street. She even stitched little outfits using discarded fabric. She would wear them when no one was home and look at herself in the cracked mirror, whispering, "One day." Her dream was simple but powerful. To go to fashion school and start her own brand, designing clothes for girls like her, girls who were always told they were not enough. But dreams were heavy in Zenari, especially for a girl no one believed in. Victoria held on to hers anyway. Meanwhile, the rain had just stopped in Rivertown, a big city a few hours away from Zenari, leaving the streets wet and shiny like glass. Mr. Martin was there on one of his usual business trips, trying to find someone to invest in his wood business, which had been quietly crumbling. He was tired and angry. The last meeting had gone badly. His phone kept buzzing with unpaid bills and complaints from workers back in Zenari City. Nothing was working anymore. As he walked through the streets hoping for a miracle, he noticed a man trimming hedges near the corner of a tall white house. The man looked familiar, his gray shirt soaked with sweat, hands covered in leaves and dirt. When the man turned, their eyes met. "Mr. John," Mr. Martin said, surprised. The man stood up straight, wiping his forehead. "Martin? Is that really you?" It had been over 15 years since he had last seen him, Mr. Martins thought to himself. Mr. John Williams, once the respected, polished businessman who had helped him start his own business, was now working as a gardener. They shook hands, and Mr. John offered a weak smile. "You look well." "I've seen better days," Mr. Martin replied. "But what about you? You don't look so well." John sighed. "It's a very long story, a very unfortunate event. Everything fell apart. My business partner betrayed me, took the company, convinced the board I was the problem. Even my investors left. I used up my savings trying to fight it in court. Lost everything." Mr. Martin blinked. "But you were doing so well." "Not anymore," Mr. John said with a small laugh. "Now I work here. The owner is kind, gave me a small place to stay, and I still have my son." "Yes, Kelvin," Mr. Martin recalled. "How is he?" "He was a little boy when I last saw him." John's smile faded. "Not good. He had a terrible accident. He's in a wheelchair now. He barely talks. I feel so bad for him. I'm not getting any younger, and I would like to get him a wife that can keep him company. But no woman wants to marry a man who can't walk and has no money." Mr. Martin stared at him, his mind suddenly racing. A poor man, a disabled son, a desperate father. And then, like lightning, the thought hit him. Victoria. Mr. Martin leaned closer. "You know, I might be able to help." John looked up. "You would?" "I have a daughter. She's quiet, strong. She is of marriageable age. Maybe she can marry Kelvin." There was no softness in his voice, no compassion, Just a sharp calculation. John hesitated. Are you sure? That's a big thing to offer. Mr. Martin waved his hand. Don't worry. She is not doing anything now anyway, and it would help you too. In truth, Mr. Martin didn't care about helping anyone. Not John, not Kelvin, not even Victoria. He just saw a chance to finally get rid of the girl he never wanted. One less mouth to feed, one less burden to carry. John nodded slowly. Let me speak to Kelvin first. Mr. Martin smiled to himself as he walked away after exchanging contact with Mr. John. He had no intention of asking Victoria what she wanted. This was perfect. Mr. Martin returned home to Zinari with a smile on his face, something rare these days. He didn't waste time. That same evening, he called his wife Clara into the sitting room and told her everything. About meeting Mr. John, about Kelvin, and about his plan for Victoria. Clara's reaction wasn't surprise. It was pure excitement. She laughed, clapping her hands. Oh, finally! That girl will be someone else's problem. But he's disabled, Mr. Martin said. Clara shrugged. Even better. She'll be stuck in one place. No running back here crying, and besides, it's not like any man from Zinari was looking at her. Just then, Lily walked in, already dressed in a fancy gown she had begged her father to buy just the week before. What's going on? She asked, chewing gum. Mr. Martin looked proud. Your sister is getting married. Lily blinked, then burst into laughter. To whom? A beggar? Something like that, Clara replied with a wicked grin. A poor, broken man in a wheelchair. Oh, wow, Lily said, smirking. Finally, she should thank us. No one else would ever want her. None of them thought to tell Victoria. The next morning, Mr. John arrived. He stepped out looking humble but tidy. Clara called Victoria from the backyard where she had been washing clothes since dawn. Pack your things, Clara said. You're leaving. Victoria frowned. Leaving? Why? Your husband's waiting, Lily added, leaning against the wall with her arms crossed. Hope you like wheelchairs. Victoria froze. Her hands, wet and wrinkled, dropped the shirt she was holding. What are you talking about? She asked, her voice shaking. Mr. Martin appeared behind her. I married you off to Mr. John's disabled son, and you're going to Rivertown with him. Today. Tears filled her eyes immediately. To who? But why? I don't even know the man. To a man who needs a wife. I already collected the bride price in full, so you do not have a choice, Mr. Martin snapped. Be grateful. You're finally useful. Victoria looked around. No one was defending her. No one even looked sorry. Her lips trembled. But I have never even met him before. What if he doesn't like me? You don't need to meet him, and he doesn't need to like you, Clara cut in. Just do as you're told. With nothing but a small bag of clothes and her precious sketchbook tucked safely under her arm, Victoria followed Mr. John out of her father's compound. No hug. No goodbye. Just silence. Rivertown was different. Victoria looked out the window of the commercial bus just as they arrived in Rivertown. The roads were wide and smooth. The buildings were tall and beautiful. People walked quickly with purpose, dressed in neat clothes and holding fancy phones. It felt like a different world. They finally stopped at a large, quiet compound with tall trees and colorful flowers. Mr. John led her past the big mansion into a smaller house at the back. A clean, tidy boys' quarters. This is your new home, he said softly with a kind, welcoming smile. Victoria looked around. It was simple but peaceful. A small living room, a neat bedroom, a clean bathroom. She had never seen anything so calm. I'll bring Kelvin shortly, Mr. John said, then left. She sat quietly on the edge of the bed, heart racing. Moments later, the door opened. In came a handsome man, wheeled in by Mr. John. His face was sharp, his eyes quiet but strong. His clothes were plain, his expression unreadable. This is Kelvin, Mr. John said, your husband. Kelvin barely looked at her. Hi, Victoria said softly. He nodded once and looked away. She stood there, holding her bag, unsure of what to do. The silence was thick. Kelvin finally spoke. You don't have to pretend. Victoria blinked. Sorry?
"I know why you're here," he said flatly. "You married me for whatever little money my father has left. Just do your part, and I'll do mine." Victoria opened her mouth to speak but closed it again. She had been unwanted in one house, and now she had stepped into another. After the awkward silence between Victoria and Kelvin, Mr. John cleared his throat gently. He looked at his son with soft, fatherly eyes. "Try to be kind, son," he said. "She didn't choose this either." Kelvin said nothing. His hands gripped the arms of his wheelchair tightly. Mr. John turned to Victoria with a tired smile. "I'll leave you two to settle in. Let me know if you need anything." And then he walked out, closing the door behind him with a quiet click. The first day was the hardest. Kelvin barely looked at her. He spent most of his time in the corner of the room, reading or staring out the window. If Victoria spoke, he would nod or give one-word answers. Sometimes he said nothing at all. She tried to make the house feel like a home, sweeping, cooking, even folding his clothes neatly. When she placed a warm bowl of rice and stew in front of him one evening, he only said, "You don't need to act. I don't need your pity." That night, Victoria cried silently on her side of the bed, holding her sketchbook like a pillow. But in the morning, she got up and tried again. Days passed like that. She would do the chores and cook, and when Kelvin ignored her, she simply stayed quiet. She started sewing again, using old shirts of his that were too loose or too worn. She didn't ask permission, she just did it. She fixed the torn sleeve of his white shirt, added buttons to a faded jacket, and made him a new pillow cover from leftover fabric she found in the storage room. At night, she sketched. Designs filled her book, ideas for jackets, dresses, and outfits she dreamed would one day walk on real runways. It was the only thing that made her feel like herself. Kelvin noticed. At first he said nothing, but he noticed the clothes she repaired. He noticed how she didn't ask for anything, how she didn't complain, how she smiled at Mr. John every evening and offered him the bigger portion of food even when they had little. One afternoon, Kelvin watched from the window as she and his father laughed over a burnt pot of beans. Her laughter was soft but real. It stirred something in him. Later that night, as Victoria was threading her needle by the dim lamp, Kelvin finally spoke. "That jacket, the one I wore today." Victoria looked up, surprised. "Yes? You fixed it?" She nodded. "It had a tear near the elbow. I hope it's okay." He paused. "It fits better now." Victoria smiled. "I'm glad." Then silence again. But this time it wasn't as heavy. Mr. John continued working the gardens of the mansion. He came home with sore hands and dirt under his nails, but he always brought fresh fruits or vegetables for their small meals. They didn't have much, but it was quiet, and no one called her useless. For the first time in her life, Victoria felt something that was missing for years: peace. Even if Kelvin barely spoke and their home was small, she felt safe. And little by little, Kelvin began to see her. The air in Rivertown grew warmer as days passed, and Victoria fell into a quiet routine. She woke early, made breakfast, cleaned the house, then spent hours sewing quietly by the window. But now, she wasn't just repairing Kelvin's old clothes. She was transforming them. She cut up shirts that were too faded, reshaped trousers that had lost their form, and stitched bold patterns from scrap fabric onto dull jackets. Piece by piece, she was creating something entirely new. Her fingers worked like magic, and soon Kelvin's clothes looked like they came from a designer store. At first, Kelvin said nothing, but he wore them. Then one morning, Victoria wheeled Kelvin into the main compound to drop something off for his father. That's when Mr. Ben saw him. Mr. Ben, the young CEO of the massive fashion empire that owned the mansion, was talking to a client in the garden. But his eyes stopped on Kelvin's jacket. Clean lines, bold stitching, and unusual but beautiful fabric combinations. He walked over, curiosity in his eyes. "Nice jacket," he said casually. "Where'd you get it?" Kelvin, unsure how to respond, looked down. "My wife made it." Ben raised a brow. "She designed this?" he asked, looking directly at her. Kelvin nodded once. Ben's interest deepened.
Wow. Later that afternoon, Mr. John came home, followed by Mr. Ben, who wore a perfectly tailored designer shirt and sunglasses with polished shoes. Victoria stood frozen at the door, hands still holding a spool of thread. "Hello, Victoria," Ben said warmly. "I must confess I like what I saw earlier. Your design, it's incredible." Victoria blinked, not knowing what to say. "You have talent," he continued. "Natural, raw, untrained, but brilliant. I own a fashion company and I'd like to offer you a spot as an intern. You'd work under our design team, learn, grow, maybe even launch your own line someday." Victoria's heart raced. Her eyes darted to Mr. John, then to Kelvin. I've never worked in a company before," she said softly. "You don't need experience," Ben replied. "You have vision. That's enough." He handed her a card, smiled, and left. That night, the house was quiet. Victoria sat with Kelvin and Mr. John, holding the business card like it was made of gold. "I want to take the offer," she said finally. "Not just for me, but for us." Mr. John listened carefully. "I know you've been working so hard to feed us and keep the lights on. If I earn something, even just a little, that can help. And maybe if I save up, I can still attend fashion school one day." She turned to Kelvin. "I won't abandon you. I'll still come home every day, cook, clean, whatever needs to be done. But I need this. Just the chance to try." There was silence for a moment. Then Kelvin spoke. "Do it." Victoria blinked. "Really?" He nodded. "You've earned it. You've already given so much." Mr. John smiled quietly, pride shining in his tired eyes. Victoria looked down at the card again. For the first time, her dream didn't feel so far away. The morning after Victoria shared her dream, she woke up early with a new light in her eyes. She didn't just want to dream anymore. She was ready to work for it. Mr. John walked her to the gate as she prepared for her first day at Dulux Group, one of the biggest fashion brands in the country. "Oh, you can do this," Mr. John said quietly. Victoria smiled, holding back tears. "You really think so, sir?" "I know so," Mr. John continued, his voice soft but strong. No one had ever believed in her before. Not her father, not Clara, not Lily. But here she was, leaving for a job where someone saw her worth and someone encouraged her. Work at Dulux Group was fast and demanding. Design boards, fabric sorting, last-minute fittings. It was a world Victoria had never seen, but she soaked it all in like rain on dry soil. She worked with passion, stayed after hours, asked questions, practiced every night. Within just a few weeks, her designs caught the attention of top managers. One of her sketches, an African-inspired jacket with modern cuts, won a regional award. People began to ask, "Who is this girl?" But no matter how tired she was, Victoria always came home. Every evening she would change out of her work clothes, cook for Kelvin and Mr. John, help Kelvin with his meds, tidy up the room, and check in with him before sleeping. In the mornings, she made sure his breakfast was ready and water boiled before rushing out. She never let her growing fame distract her from her home. At the office, eyes were watching. Mr. Ben noticed more than her designs. He noticed her smile, her quiet strength, the way she walked with grace and spoke with kindness. One afternoon, as she reviewed fabric samples, Ben came over with 2 cups of coffee. "Thought you could use a break," he said, offering her one. "Thanks," Victoria said softly. "You're talented, Victoria, but you're holding back." She frowned slightly. "I'm doing my best." "No, I mean, your designs deserve global attention," Ben said, leaning closer. "With my help, you could study abroad, meet the best designers, launch your own brand. I can give you that. Everything you've ever wanted, if you let me in." Victoria went still. "I'm married," she said, her voice calm but firm. Ben smiled. "To a man in a wheelchair? Come on, Victoria. You deserve more. You could have the world." Victoria stood up slowly. "The world means nothing to me if I have to throw away my soul to get it. I have a husband who believed in me before anyone else did. I'm not leaving him." Ben smiled. She walked away, holding her dignity like a crown.
Later that week, she met a new intern named Rachel. They shared lunch and swapped stories. But when Victoria told Rachel about turning down Ben's offer, Rachel stared. "Are you serious? You're wasting your chance for what? A poor man who can't walk?" Victoria smiled gently. "He may not walk, but he stands by me better than anyone ever has. And I think I am beginning to like him. I miss him so much every time I am at work." Rachel didn't understand. But Victoria didn't expect her to. She was just happy to be with Kelvin, even though she didn't know if he felt the same way. At least he treated her much better now. A few weeks after that, things at work began to change. Whispers floated in the hallways of Dulux Group. Some said Victoria was only rising because of her connection with Mr. Ben. Others claimed she was secretly dating him. The award she won? They said it was a gift, not talent. Victoria heard the rumors in the lunchroom, in the corridors, even from people she once greeted with smiles. Her heart ached, but she said nothing. Rachel, her new friend, leaned closer one afternoon while they folded sample fabrics. "You know," Rachel began, "most girls would give anything to be in your shoes. I mean, Mr. Ben is young, rich, and handsome. They're already bad-mouthing you when you aren't even with him, so why not just do it? You think people care about the wheelchair guy you go home to, and that tiny little boy's quarters you live in?" Victoria dropped the fabric slowly. She looked Rachel in the eyes and said, "I don't care about what outsiders think. I didn't marry Kelvin for money or attention. I married him because for the first time in my life, I found peace. And I'm not giving that up for anyone." Rachel rolled her eyes. "Peace won't pay bills, Victoria. You have your whole future ahead of you." Victoria smiled faintly. "Maybe not. But it gives me something money never gave me. Freedom." That evening, Victoria came home quieter than usual. Kelvin noticed. He watched as she folded laundry in silence, her shoulders slouched. She didn't hum like she usually did. Her hands moved more slowly. After dinner, he rolled over beside her on the couch. "You okay?" he asked gently. She nodded, but her eyes were tired. "What happened?" he pressed. She sighed and looked at him. It's Ben. He's been trying to make me get together with him. And people at work, they're talking. They think I'm with him, that I'm using him to climb." Kelvin looked away. "I'm sorry," she said quickly. "I didn't mean to upset you. It's not you," Kelvin said quietly. "It's me." She blinked. "What do you mean?" He took a deep breath. Maybe you should go. Maybe Ben is right. You could have the world. Why waste it here, with a disabled man like me?" Victoria sat up straight, eyes burning. "Don't say that. I can't walk, Victoria. I can't even stand beside you when people insult you. I can't give you what he can." She reached for his hand. "But you gave me what nobody else ever did." Kelvin looked at her. "You gave me kindness, patience, and respect. You saw me when I felt invisible. I don't want cars or mansions. I want you." Tears filled his eyes. "But I have nothing." "You have everything I ever needed," she whispered. And then, for the first time since their wedding, she kissed him. It was soft at first, then stronger. The kind of kiss that says, "I choose you, no matter what." In that moment, they weren't a broken man and a forgotten girl. They were home. Later that night, the stars above were soft and steady, like they were listening too. Inside the small house behind the mansion, Kelvin sat beside Victoria, his fingers gently brushing hers. The kiss they had shared still lingered between them, warm, real, and honest. He looked at her, truly looked at her, for a long time. Then he sighed deeply. "I need to tell you something. Everything." Victoria turned to him, eyebrows raised, but she said nothing. Kelvin's voice was low, steady. "Victoria, I'm not poor." She blinked. "What?" "I'm not just some broken man living behind a rich man's house. This mansion, the company, the brand, it's all mine. I own it." Victoria stared, confused.
Ben? Ben is my personal assistant, Kelvin explained. My public face. After my accident, I didn't want to be seen anymore. I didn't want pity, so I stayed behind the curtain, let him handle things on the surface. Victoria's lips parted, speechless. Kelvin went on. When my father, Mr. John, told me about you, I didn't want to go through with it. I was angry, tired, and didn't believe anyone could love me for me anymore. He paused, looking into her eyes. But my father said something. He said, "What if she's different?" He was only out gardening when he ran into your father, who he let assume things just to see how he would react. And to my dad's surprise, he sold you out without hesitation. So we staged everything. The small house, the silence, the lowlife, even the job offer from Ben. We wanted to see what you would choose, me or the world. Victoria's heart pounded. You were testing me?" she whispered. Kelvin nodded. "I'm sorry. I hated doing it. But I needed to know if you stayed because you pitied me, or because you loved me." He swallowed hard. "And you chose me. You chose me over fame, over money, over everything." Victoria looked down, her chest tight. "Everything that happened, the clothes, the job, all real," he said. "Your talent is real, your strength, your heart, everything. I just needed to be sure, and now I am." Tears slipped down Victoria's cheeks. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" "Because I was scared," Kelvin admitted. "But now, I'm not." He reached out, gently cupping her face. "You made me believe again. In people, in love, in second chances." Victoria looked into his eyes, eyes that once held pain, now full of hope. "I didn't stay because of money," she said softly. "I stayed because you made me feel safe, seen, like I mattered." Kelvin nodded, tears in his own eyes. "And you do, more than anything." The silence that followed Kelvin's confession was long and heavy. Victoria sat still, her heart full. She was shocked, yes, even hurt a little. The truth had shaken everything she thought she knew. But as she looked into Kelvin's eyes, she didn't see pride or games. She saw fear. She saw regret. But most of all, she saw love. "I won't lie," she whispered. "It hurts, that you didn't trust me enough to tell me." Kelvin lowered his head, ashamed. "But I understand now," she continued softly. "You've been hurt before. Deeply." He nodded slowly. "I was engaged once, before the accident. We had our future planned, until the crash. She left within a month. Said she couldn't build a life with someone who might never walk again." Victoria reached out and held his hand. "She didn't love you," she said gently. "Not like I do." Kelvin looked at her, surprised. "You love me?" he asked, voice cracking. Victoria smiled, tears in her eyes. "Yes, I do. With everything in me." He let out a shaky breath, and they held each other tightly. Two people who had known deep pain, now choosing deep healing. The next few weeks were a new beginning. Kelvin made arrangements for Victoria to become creative director of one of his growing fashion labels, a brand focused on bold, authentic African designs. Her first day at the company as the real boss brought stares. People who weren't aware of the plan hid in shame at the shallow-mindedness. Rachel approached her and apologized for being such a shallow person, not looking at the big picture. She walked in with her head high. She also enrolled in fashion school. Every day she studied sketches, fabric science, fashion history, and business strategy. Her nights were split between designing, studying, and coming home to care for Kelvin. But now, it was different. They were no longer strangers trapped in silence. They were partners, building something real. And she didn't stop there. "Let's try therapy again," Victoria told Kelvin one morning. He frowned. "You really think it'll work?" "I believe it can," she said, holding his hand. "But more importantly, you need to believe it too." She wheeled him into sessions, helped with exercises, and clapped the first time he stood for 2 full seconds on his own. She hugged him so tightly that day he almost fell over, but they just laughed. Mr. John watched everything with quiet amazement. His son, who had once locked himself away in bitterness, was now laughing again, hopeful again. And it was all because of Victoria. One evening he pulled her aside, holding her hand. "You've brought life back into my son," he said, his voice trembling. "And for that, I'll never stop thanking you. Your father should be grateful he has a daughter like you." Victoria smiled. "He brought life back into me too, sir." While Victoria's world bloomed with light and love, far away in Zenari City, the shadows were closing in. Mr. Martin sat alone in his now empty office. The shelves were bare. The phone calls had stopped, not because the bills were paid, but because everyone had given up on him. His final business deal had fallen through. His name, once respected in town, now brought only sighs and warnings. And just like that, everything crumbled. Clara was the first to act. One morning, Mr. Martin woke up to find her gone. The wardrobe was empty. The kitchen was bare. She had taken everything valuable, including the last bit of cash they had hidden under the floorboard. Lily left too, without a word, without a glance back. They left behind only a note. "We're not staying to suffer. Don't even bother looking for me." Mr. Martin, once proud, once cruel, now wandered the streets of Zenari with tired steps and a hollow heart. His last hope, his only hope, was the same girl he had once thrown away without blinking. Victoria. He arrived in Rivertown with nothing but an old bag and worn-out shoes. When he reached the gate of the mansion, the guards didn't recognize him. But when he said Victoria's name, they let him in. She was at the fashion studio, helping Kelvin adjust a new custom-designed suit. She hadn't expected a visitor. When the door opened and she turned around, her heart stopped. Her father, weaker, older, defeated. "Victoria," he said, barely meeting her eyes. "Please." She stood tall, her hand resting on the table, silent. I lost everything," he stammered. "Clara left, Lily too. I have no one, nowhere to go." He looked down. "I'm sorry for everything." Victoria walked over slowly. She looked at him for a long time. This was the man who had thrown her to a stranger like old furniture. The man who had never called her daughter with warmth. The man who never once believed in her. And yet, she didn't hate him. "I forgive you," she said quietly. Mr. Martin looked up, hope flickering. "But," she added, her voice stronger now, "you will never hurt me again." She pulled out her phone, sent money to clear his rent for the next few months, and then turned to the assistant nearby. "Make sure he gets food before he leaves." Mr. Martin opened his mouth, but no words came. Victoria walked back to Kelvin's side. Without another glance, she closed the door. In that moment, the girl once abandoned stood taller than ever, not with revenge, but with peace. After her father left, Victoria sat quietly in the garden behind the mansion. She didn't cry. She didn't celebrate. She simply breathed, because for the first time in her life, she had truly let go. She had chosen peace over pain, healing over hate. And with Kelvin by her side, she felt ready for whatever came next. Kelvin, watching all this unfold, felt something shift deep inside him. He had spent so long believing he didn't deserve happiness. But Victoria's love, her courage, her forgiveness, her fire, had changed everything. That week he doubled his therapy sessions. He pushed harder, sweated more, and stopped making excuses. And then one morning, he stood. It was shaky. It was slow. But he stood without anyone holding him. Victoria walked into the therapy room, arms full of fabrics, and stopped in her tracks. Kelvin looked at her, smiling through tears. Surprise. She dropped everything and ran to him, holding him tight as he balanced with the help of a rail. "I knew you could," she whispered into his chest. He hugged her back. "Because you believed." A month later, Kelvin had another surprise. He blindfolded Victoria and took her to a quiet part of Rivertown. When she opened her eyes, she gasped. In front of her stood a white mansion, bright in the afternoon sun. The gates opened to reveal a beautiful garden,
a long driveway, and walls lined with paintings of her designs. Kelvin took her hand. "This is yours." She followed him inside. Every room had a piece of her. Her first sketchbook, now framed. Her handmade dresses, now displayed. And in the center of the house, a fully equipped fashion studio, glowing with light and possibility. "I wanted you to have a space where your dreams don't just live. They fly." Victoria turned to him, tears in her eyes. "How did I ever deserve you?" Kelvin smiled. "I ask myself the same thing every day." Victoria completed fashion school that year, top of her class. With Kelvin's support and her own fire, she launched her own brand. Not just threads. Her designs walked international runways. Her face appeared on magazine covers. People spoke of her as the voice of a new generation in fashion, bold, brave, and deeply real. Yet every day after interviews and flights, she returned home to Kelvin, to their quiet dinners and long walks through the studio. And every morning, she woke up beside the man who once thought no one would ever love him. Two hearts, once broken, now whole. With her fashion brand blooming and her name celebrated across continents, Victoria knew it was time for something even deeper. Not just clothes, not just fame, but change. She remembered the little storeroom back in Zinari City, the one filled with scrap fabric, dust, and dreams no one believed in. She remembered how it felt to sew with trembling hands, unsure if she would ever be seen. And so she created The Thread Within, a fashion institute for underprivileged children, especially girls from small towns like Zinari. They were taught to sketch, sew, dream, and rise, no matter who they were or where they came from. "We're not just making clothes," Victoria told the students one day. "We're stitching back dignity." Months later, Victoria began feeling tired more often. She brushed it off. Maybe it was the workload or travel or just the weather. But when she nearly fainted during a design consultation, Kelvin insisted they go to the hospital. He held her hand tightly in the waiting room, nervous but calm. The doctor walked in with a wide smile. "Well," he said, flipping through the file, "you're not sick." Kelvin frowned. "Then what is it?" The doctor grinned. "You're pregnant." Victoria's eyes widened. "Pregnant?" "Not just that," the doctor chuckled. "With twins." Victoria gasped, covering her mouth. Kelvin froze, then let out a laugh that turned into a tearful, joyful sound. They hugged tightly, still unable to fully believe it. Two hearts, now becoming four. A few weeks later, Victoria and Kelvin walked into one of the biggest fashion galas of the year. Cameras flashed. People turned. But this time, she didn't walk in as the girl from nowhere. She didn't walk in as someone's assistant. She walked in hand with her husband. The world saw them now as they truly were, husband and wife, CEO and visionary. Two survivors, two builders, two lovers. And as she stepped onto the stage to receive the award for Global Fashion Icon of the Year, Victoria looked out at the crowd, then down at her gently growing belly. She smiled, because once upon a time, she was thrown away. Now she had built a kingdom with thread, love, and grace. Final line. They gave her away like she was nothing. She rose and dressed the world in her name.